Before we turn the page on 2025, there's one more Formula 1 game to thoroughly review. And while we can't celebrate the arrival of another sim racing title, 3D Clouds has decided to give arcade monoposto racing a crack. As such, Formula Legends aims to take you through the illustrious history of open-wheel racing from the 1960s right up until today. But can this cartoony game impress with its charm and design? Or does it fall flat from flag to flag? Well, let's find out. Formula Legends is going to be released on September 18th for PC, PS5, Xbox Series X/S, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. No Season Pass or DLC has been announced, though it seems that 3D Clouds does consider significant upgrades to the game if it happens to sell well. And with 16 different seasons and 32 track layouts at hand, the signs aren't looking too bad. Conceptually, Formula Legends is an arcade racing game first and foremost, offering an unlicensed open-wheel experience in cars from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. Seeing as the studio didn't acquire the official license to the Formula 1 World Championship, you'll be racing a blue Firex at a rain-soaked Carnival GP, or help Harold Brezel in his quest to push Sober up the front of the field. Still, most of you will be able to recognize iconic teams, drivers, and venues in-game. And if you're worried about authenticity, we do know that the studio wants to release an external modding tool for the game, allowing for you to change names and liveries. However, at the time of this review, we've not had a chance to test that ourselves. What we were able to test, though, was the varied assortment of cars and tracks in Formula Legends. While some have asked whether you can use a wheel to play the game, there is no official support for them at this stage. In other words, if you want to play the story mode, create your own championships, or test your pace in time trial leaderboards, you're gonna have to use a controller. Now, if you enjoyed the way these cars handle in the free-to-download demo version of Formula Legends, you're most likely going to enjoy their handling in the full release. There's still an emphasis on carrying momentum through the corners, hitting apex, with braking being the biggest challenge by far. If you're too light on the trigger, you might end up losing time, whereas if you're too forceful, your tires are gonna lock up and your vehicle of choice might end up in a gravel trap. Overall, the balance feels understeery, with tire wear significantly hampering your pace and reducing both front and rear grip over a stint. Admittedly, the model isn't particularly deep, as we go from loads of grip to little grip rather quickly. That said, the cars do feel logical to some extent. It might take some time to master all the circuits, but there is an undoubted sense of joy in pushing these Formula Legends. So no matter what modes or features may or may not be present, 3D Clouds has managed to build a framework that feels rewarding on track. If you've ever played the early Formula 1 games on PlayStation 1, you should feel right at home. Cars do differ between eras or different manufacturers. Nonetheless, racing a 1960s monoposto doesn't feel too different compared to a 2020s machine. There is less grip and reduced top speed, with the balance feeling almost exactly the same. It makes our job easier, yet it stifles the game's supposed variety. Racing in different eras at different venues simply doesn't feel all that unique. AI difficulty, on the other hand, does seem to vary between generations or even tracks. Let's take the Riviera Streets Grand Prix. I personally didn't have any problems qualifying my midfield car in pole position for a race with the mid-2010s hybrids. In contrast, pushing an early 80s turbo monster beyond P14 was quite tough. Mind you, I'm not a quick driver in either one of these. Or look at the contrast between my no-efforts pole position in Mexico and my mediocre starting spot in Japan, both using the exact same car at the hardest difficulty level. Furthermore, your AI competitors aren't particularly pleasant to race. That isn't to say 3D Clouds hasn't improved their lack of spatial awareness. Originally, we struggled to not get hit by competitors in early testing. Thankfully, the latest patch has reduced the AI's aggression significantly. Still, their behavior is nothing to write home about and can be a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes they defend, most of the time they don't, or they still decide to consider your car a target for aerial assault. As I've stated before, playing the old F1 games on PS1 will prepare you for some of these shenanigans, though considering this game is released in 2025, it's a bit disappointing to see the lack of development since then. And lest we forget that the version of the game we tested was still marred with small bugs and glitches. Weather effects do look nice, however, if you expect these neat-looking puddles to influence your car's grip or for wet lines to come into play, you'll be very disappointed. If anything, it seems that your top speed is capped whenever wet weather is a factor. Other than that, you can't feel any difference compared to dry weather running. To be fair, the game does offer a few highlights with regard to racing, such as a timing minigame to ensure perfect traction for the start, reminiscent of Mario Kart, or a pit stop minigame reminding us of the old F1 games on PlayStation 2. Different tire compounds allow for you to strategize a bit and consider different options, even at shorter race lengths. There is a small problem with that element though. Only modern cars starting from the late 2000s allow for such a choice at the beginning of a race. Now, some of you might not be aware, but Pirelli didn't invent the idea of different tire compounds in the world of Grand Prix racing. If anything, they were the first company to truly emphasize them with colorful rims on television. So while racing retro cars throughout the 20th century is a serviceable experience, it does lack a level of variety that modern cars do offer in-game. Quite a shame. Other details of their respective eras are missing as well, where 2020's hybrids feature a battery system and WRS. We're still looking for a turbo gauge in the 80s cars or an override button in the early 2000s. Not even period-correct refueling manages to offer strategic variety for some of the retro cars. Sure, that might sound like a nifty nitpick, but as much as Formula Legend's driving model feels enjoyable, there isn't that much happening on track for most of the experience. The damage model is incredibly simple, as you can't lose any of your wheels or wings. Constantly bumping into the barrier or into your competitors will cause you to lose speed, yet there are no mechanical failures or specific problems beyond your car getting worse and worse. You can't adjust your car's setup, nor can you shift manually. I mean, at the very least, you'll have more than enough time to appreciate the adorable scenery. You can tell that the developers really try to immerse you in different eras and recreate iconic venues from racing history. And while there's a good variety of tracks to choose from, my personal favorite has to be this suspiciously foresty track in Germany. Funnily enough, it's on tracks like these where Formula Legends shines the most. Give me a challenging track, a fun car, and competitive AI drivers, and the game can become immensely addictive. It's no surprise that fans of the demo were already chasing world record times in time trial mode. Other highlights in fictitious track design include the twisty Carnival Grand Prix or this seaside trip to the Côte d'Azur. These venues allow for the engine to shine and impress with atmospheric lighting. Only the constant pop-in tends to ruin the mood a little, and I suppose we could do without textures turning into N64 Vaseline whenever conditions change. Generally speaking, we didn't encounter any big problems in terms of performance. There were frame drops from time to time, but other than that, the game ran with a smooth 60 frames per second in all conditions. Sadly, we weren't in a position to test the game on consoles, so we can only provide a PC perspective. As for game modes, you can take a trip through racing history thanks to the aforementioned story mode, though we decided to put that in air quotes because, well, this is the extent of the supposed story. Essentially, Essentially, this experience functions as a championship mode, unlocking different types of cars and tracks. Then again, playing through the mode once isn't gonna unlock everything automatically. Some cars are locked behind a specific number of points scored in story mode, whereas others are locked behind a specific number of races you need to run for a specific team, and so on. A solid idea in theory, hampered by the lack of distinguishable attributes between cars of the same generation. Additionally, you can't change any of the race settings for story mode other than the difficulty level of your AI competitors and whether you want to use driver aids. You can create a custom championship with different rules and your very own schedule separately. Whether that sounds like an exciting prospect to sink your teeth into, that's up for you to decide. Also keep in mind that throughout these different eras and generations and decades of Grand Prix racing history, the point system doesn't change either. Additionally, at this point in time, there is no multiplayer whatsoever, excluding the time trial leaderboards. You can spend quite a bit of time experimenting in the game's photo mode. Let's just ignore that one of the glitches we encountered actually happened to be part of the user interface here. If you're hoping to capture your personal highlights through replays, well, you can't, because there aren't any. In fact, to keep up with what's happening around you on track is a bit tricky. You can't change the on-screen layout, and the timing screen doesn't show most of the field or who's already made a pit stop. All in all, Formula Legends is not a bad racing game. Conceptually, it tries to bridge the gap between arcade racers and simcade experiences. In that attempt, it fails to fully utilize its potential. It does offer a solid racing experience with loads of charm and manages to stand out, and fans of the F1 games from Bizarre Creations should definitely consider giving it a try. If you ever stumbled upon Formula Legends as part of a Steam sale, it would be a good deal. Nevertheless, without a multiplayer, you have to entertain yourself with a repetitive story mode or compete with your friends through online leaderboards. But what do you think? Are you looking forward to Formula Legends? Let us know in the comments below. Until then, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the review, we'd highly appreciate it if you like and subscribe. And, as always, keep racing. Bye-bye!